The rain had just begun to fall in scattered drops when Madam Ezen stood at the balcony of her luxurious duplex in Lekki, sipping from a glass of orange juice. Everything in her life screamed success. She owned a thriving fashion empire, had elite friends, and drove the latest SUV. Yet, for all her riches, her home echoed with emptiness. She had no husband. No children. Or so she believed. "I need a new maid," she muttered, scrolling through her phone. The last one had stolen jewelry and vanished overnight. This time, she wanted someone quiet, submissive, and grateful to have a roof over her head. Later that week, a slender young girl named Amarachi arrived. She was brought by an old village agent who vouched for her loyalty. Amarachi was barely 17, with deep brown eyes that rarely made contact and a silence that wrapped around her like a second skin. She spoke only when spoken to and moved with the careful grace of someone who had learned to make herself invisible. "She'll do," Ezen said flatly, without a second glance. What Madam Ezen didn't know was that Amarachi had grown up in an orphanage in Enugu, abandoned at just a year old. She had no memory of her parents, only a worn-out wrapper sewn with the initials Easy and a faded photograph of a woman who looked exactly like Madam Ezen, though younger and happier. Amarachi had taken the job not just for survival, but for answers. The moment she saw Ezen's face on a billboard in Enugu, her heart had stopped. It was the same woman from the photo. The woman in her dreams. Could it be? In her first few days at the house, Amarachi watched Ezen closely. She memorized her routines, her moods, her smile. But she also endured sharp words and cold silence. Ezen wasn't cruel, but she was indifferent, treating Amarachi like any other help, invisible, disposable. One afternoon, while dusting the master bedroom, Amarachi found an old drawer left slightly open. Inside was a velvet box holding a photo album. As she flipped through it, her hands trembled. Then, on the last page, she saw it, the same photograph she had carried all her life. The woman. The wrapper. The same initials, Easy. Her mind spun. What did this mean? That night, she cried quietly into her thin bedsheet, torn between confusion and a fragile hope. Meanwhile, Ezen noticed something strange. That photo, she hadn't seen it in years. And she never remembered leaving the drawer open. The next morning, she summoned Amarachi. The girl stood in front of her, trembling. "You were in my room. What were you looking for?" Ezen demanded. I was just cleaning, Ma." Her voice was soft, almost familiar. Something about her eyes stirred something long buried in Ezen's chest. But she pushed it down. "Don't touch my personal things again," she snapped. Amarachi bowed and turned to leave. But as she did, Ezen whispered to herself, "Why do you remind me of someone I lost?" The house was full of secrets, and one of them was about to break wide open. Ezen couldn't sleep that night. Amarachi's face haunted her, the curve of her cheekbones, the dimple that appeared when she smiled shyly. There was something strangely familiar about that girl. Something that clawed at the walls of her memory. She pulled the old photo album from the drawer again and stared at the faded picture of herself holding a baby, wrapped in that ochre cloth with the initials Easy. That day had been the happiest and most painful of her life. 18 years ago, when she was still a struggling tailor in Saka, she had given birth alone in a church compound after her boyfriend vanished. Her family had disowned her. She was broke, ashamed, and too scared to raise a child alone. She left the baby at the doorstep of an orphanage, wrapped in that very cloth, and fled the village before sunrise. She never told anyone. She never looked back. But now, was fate bringing that past to her doorstep? Downstairs, Amarachi scrubbed the kitchen floor with trembling hands. Her mind was a whirlpool of doubt and fear. What if Ezen found out the truth? Would she be accepted? Or thrown out? Still, she needed answers. That evening, Amarachi gathered courage and knocked gently on Ezen's door. "What is it?" Ezen asked, not looking up from her iPad. I found a photo in the album. It looks like the one I have," Amarachi said carefully. She pulled a worn picture from her pocket and held it out. Ezen froze. Her eyes widened as she took the photograph. It was identical, same background, same wrapper, same baby. Her fingers trembled. "Where did you get this?" "It was given to me by the matron at the orphanage," Amarachi whispered. "She said it was left with me when I was abandoned." The silence in the room grew thick. No, Ezen muttered, backing away as if the photo were cursed. Her breath grew shallow. "It can't be." Tears welled in Amarachi's eyes. "Do you remember anything? Anything at all?" I left a child. Years ago. But I was young. Stupid. I thought I was doing the right thing." Their eyes met. A storm of emotions passed between them, grief, regret, wonder, and a flicker of something softer. Something maternal. Suddenly, Ezen shouted, "Get out." Amarachi stumbled back in shock. "I said get out." "I need time to think," Ezen cried, her voice cracking. Amarachi left the room silently, her heart shattered. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did Ezen. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, she wept, for the child she left behind, for the years lost, and for the pain now staring her in the face. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. The next day, Ezen made a phone call that would change everything. To a hospital. She needed a DNA test. Because if what she feared was true, her entire life was built on a lie she tried to bury. The hospital waiting room was quiet, but inside Ezen's chest, a war raged. She clutched her handbag tightly as she waited for the lab technician to return with the DNA results. Amarachi sat across from her, staring at the floor, hands folded tightly in her lap. They hadn't spoken since the outburst. The silence between them was heavy, filled with fear, guilt, and the weight of a truth neither wanted to face without proof. Moments later, the doctor entered with a thin envelope. His face was unreadable. "Madam Ezen," he began, handing her the file. "The results are conclusive." Her hands trembled as she tore it open. Her eyes scanned the paper, then froze. 99.9% match. She couldn't breathe. Tears sprang to her eyes, but they didn't fall. Amarachi looked up, searching her face. "Is it true?" Ezen nodded slowly. "You're my daughter." The room spun. "I didn't know." "I swear, Amarachi. I was desperate back then. Poor. Alone. I thought you'd be better off without me. I lived my whole life wondering why I wasn't wanted," Amarachi said, voice cracking. "Do you know what it's like to grow up watching other kids get adopted while you wait? To wonder what you did wrong before you could even talk." Her words pierced through Ezen like knives. "I thought about you every day," she whispered. "But I was too much of a coward to look for you. I tried to erase the past. I thought success would heal the wound. But it didn't, did it?" Amarachi asked bitterly. Ezen shook her head. "No. It only made the silence louder." There was a long pause. Then Amarachi stood. "Thank you for the truth. I just needed to know. I'll go now." Ezen's eyes widened. "Go? Where will you go?" "Back to the orphanage. Back to where I came from." "No," Ezen said suddenly, rising. "You came from me. And I won't lose you again." "But you pushed me away," Amarachi said, voice cracking. I was scared. But I'm not anymore. If you'll give me a chance, let me make it right. Amarachi hesitated. The pain was deep, but so was the longing. She didn't need riches. She didn't need apologies. She just wanted a mother. Finally, she whispered, then don't treat me like a maid anymore. Ezen reached out, tears streaming now. Never again. They embraced, an awkward, trembling hug between two broken hearts slowly learning to beat as one. Weeks passed. Amarachi stopped wearing the house uniform. She began joining Ezen for breakfast. They laughed awkwardly at first, but day by day, the walls crumbled. Still, the road wasn't easy. There were moments of silence. Moments when old wounds reopened. But there was also healing. Growth. And a quiet, growing bond that no lie could destroy. In the end, the real shock wasn't that Ezen had unknowingly hired her daughter. It was that fate, no matter how cruel, sometimes gives second chances. But only to those who are brave enough to face the truth, and love despite the scars.